This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, and welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alex Masford. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and to be continuing to listen to the show. If you are a returning listener, we really do appreciate you. Before I start talking anything sports, I want to remind you all of a couple of things. First, please subscribe to the podcast on whatever podcasting app or website you are listening to this on. To do that, you can just go to our homepage and hit the subscribe button. If you're on Apple Podcasts, it'll be in the top right-hand corner with next to that plus sign that says subscribe. You want to subscribe to the podcast for a couple of reasons, but the main one being you get those alerts and those notifications on your phone, on your laptop, on your watch, on whatever you may be listening to this episode on, and you can always know when we drop a new episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast here at the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, please subscribe to the podcast so you can get those alerts and notifications, and that way you can never miss an episode and be one of the first people to listen to a new episode when we release it. Again, please subscribe to the podcast. We'd also really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star review or just a positive review on that same podcasting app or website on that same device. Just to give us a boost of confidence, to let us know that you guys are enjoying the content and discussion points and the structure of the show. And if you are, again, we would really appreciate it if you leave us a 5-star review or just a positive review in general on that same Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Podbean, whatever you might be listening to this on. Again, same thing, just go to the homepage and click leave a review. That would give us a big boost of confidence. Again, it would let us know that you guys are enjoying the structure of the show and everything about it. So that would be awesome if you could. And finally, if you could follow us on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram is where you can primarily follow us. Over there, we can interact and pretty much talk about anything. Over on social media, we can talk about sports, we can talk about life, we're going to do some live tweeting of some big-time hockey games or baseball games when the season starts. Whatever it may be, all of those interaction needs can be found on social media. So again, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram is where you can primarily follow us, and we would love if you could do so. I hope wherever you are and however you may be listening, you and your family are happy and healthy during these extremely trying times in the world today. We have a fantastic show for you all today. This episode is the episode that I've been hyping up as the mock draft special. So everything in today's episode is going to be an NFL-related topic, and all of them are really going to be related around the draft. So later on in the episode, for the last 2 segments, really the second half of today's show, I will be giving you a full 32-pick first-round mock draft. All of my mock drafts previous to this have been just the first 16 picks. This one is a full 32 selection first round mock draft. So if I haven't gotten to your favorite team because they pick later in the first round, I will get to them today. I'll be giving you sort of a breakdown of each and every pick, why I picked that person. There's a ton of trades in it as well. So this is my personal prediction on what I believe is going to happen tonight when you're listening to this Thursday for the first round of the NFL draft. Again, not what I would personally do, but what I believe will be happening Thursday night. So that's coming in the second half of today's show. It'll probably take up 2 segments. I'm so excited to give it to you guys. I'm doing a lot of research, watched a lot of film, try to do the best as I can to figure out which each team needs and why. I didn't want to give you guys any picks that just made no sense from a scheme fit or from a positional fit. I know that happens a lot of times with mock drafts, that guys just go to teams that don't even make sense, and it's sort of a waste. I don't want to do that. I want to make sure that if I talk about your favorite team, the pick makes sense from a fit standpoint and everything like that, and it's a realistic option as well. So we're going to get all into all that good stuff later on in the episode. I do also want to get to 2 NFL trades that happened over the last few days. Obviously, the Chiefs trading for that stud tackle, who I will get to later on in the episode, and the Teddy Bridgewater to the Denver Broncos trade, probably taking them out of the quarterback market in the draft. That will also be discussed later on in the show. But I want to start off with, of course, the number one story of this draft. It's been the number one story for the last few months, and I've talked about it at length. I'm talking about the third overall pick with San Francisco. Again, I've talked about this so many times, about Mac Jones, about Trey Lance, about Justin Fields, and I honestly did not want to talk about it in today's episode because, again, we hadn't gotten a lot of new information recently, and it appeared it was going to be Mac Jones. I didn't want to talk about it because, again, it's not my personal pick, and we've talked about it almost every single episode about this pick, how it's the most important pick in the draft, how nobody knows what San Francisco is going to do, or maybe we do with Mac Jones. It's controversial. It's been the number one storyline about this draft. Not even Trevor Lawrence, not Zach Wilson. Those are set in stone. It's all been about San Francisco and this third overall pick. Who are they taking at quarterback? And we finally got some new information. And again, I would say take this with a grain of salt, but it was Adam Schefter, and he said that the gap has narrowed between Trey Lance and Mac Jones, and the report is coming out now from Ian Rappaport, from other people, that the 49ers have locked in on either Mac Jones or Trey Lance to be selected third overall. They say, according to reports, that they haven't made a decision yet. I have to believe that San Francisco probably has made a decision on who they've picked. It just hasn't gotten out to the media, and it probably won't get out to the media. We all know who I would pick. I've talked about this at length. I think Trey Lance is better than Mac Jones. I think Justin Fields is better than Mac Jones, and I obviously think Wilson and Lawrence are better than Mac Jones. Again, my quarterback ranking system this year for this year's draft class, which I believe is an incredible quarterback draft class, I would probably say it's better than last year's. It's probably deeper than last year's, even though last year's draft class was incredible. I know there's the same draft class as like 2017, which had Mahomes and Watson. That was an incredible draft class. Recently was a 2018 with Baker, Allen, and Lamar. Sam Darnold could also be up there one day. That's an incredible draft class. I think this quarterback draft class is really, really good. Traditionally, when there's quarterbacks taken in the first round, there's one or two guys that hit, one or two guys that are okay, and then there's the bust, right? It's a little bit different nowadays. I think a lot of younger quarterbacks are working and succeeding more than usual now. It's pretty clear that the new strategy in the NFL right now is to win with a quarterback on a rookie contract. So a lot of these guys, even when they are drafted by bad teams, they spend money, they go to teams with high cap space, they get more draft picks. If you look at like Tua, who was drafted by the Dolphins, that Dolphins have done everything in their power so far to put weapons around him, and they'll continue to do so in this draft with Jalen Waddle or Devonta Smith or Kyle Pitts, right? So I think younger quarterbacks' success rates are a little bit higher than they have been in the past. Again, it used to be a lot of guys would miss, maybe one or two guys would hit. I think the success rate's a little bit better now. That also helps, of course, because of the college schemes and everything like that. So if you just want to go through my rankings again, it was Trevor Lawrence 1, Zach Wilson 2, Trey Lance is a close 3. So again, I don't think there's a big gap between Wilson and Lance. And then Justin Fields as a very close 4. Again, I don't think there's a huge gap between Lance and Fields. Then there is a gap. And I think those are the 4 quarterbacks that I believe have a chance to become all-star players no matter who they're picked by. I don't think, again, if they go to when they go to a team, it doesn't mean they're going to be, I'm not saying they're going to be successful no matter what. I don't know if Zach Wilson can save the Jets or if Trevor Lawrence can save the Jaguars, but I do believe they have the ability to. I wouldn't give it a 0% chance that Trey Lance could be incredible with the Broncos or another team or whatever, or Lawrence will be incredible with the Jaguars. I just know that they have the capabilities to do that. Mac Jones, I know for a fact, can't save a franchise. Mac Jones cannot save the Jacksonville Jaguars. Mac Jones can't save the New York Jets. He has to go to that ideal, perfect situation that has weapons around him, a great offensive line, a great defense, probably good head coaching coordinators, and probably not the toughest division in the world either, because again, it's unlikely that Mac Jones is ever going to be the top quarterback in his division. It might even be unlikely he's a top 2 quarterback in his division, no matter what division he gets picked in, right? So you need a lot of things around Mac Jones. And that's what makes this pick so interesting, because San Francisco has all those things. They are in a win-now situation. They're not a team that's a traditional team looking for a quarterback to build around, right? This is a good team that was in the Super Bowl a little over a year and a half ago that knows how to build a Super Bowl contender with a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo who is limited in some ways. Again, he's not the most limited quarterback. He's not a guy who, again, you've seen quarterbacks throughout the past like Brock Osweiler, like Josh Rosen was, just extremely limited. Can't do anything athletically at all. Jimmy Garoppolo's athletic enough. He can move. He's not the type of athlete that's going to run away from defenders. He's more pocket awareness, stepping up in the pocket type of athletic. But again, he's not the worst athlete. His problem has been injuries. They need a quarterback who's going to be in there day in, day out to run the Kyle Shanahan system, because the Kyle Shanahan system wins you a lot of games. But here's where I get into trouble here, because Kyle Shanahan is all about win now, and the 49ers should be about win now. They have an incredible roster, a Super Bowl roster. They're going to have to pay a lot of these guys like Bosa, Deebo Samuel soon. Not immediately, but soon. They are going to have to pay these guys. And I understand not wanting to go forward with Jimmy Garoppolo because of his injury history, because of his limitedness. But if you're going to move off of Jimmy Garoppolo and replace him with a guy who's just as limited, if not more limited, that doesn't make a lot of sense for me. Got to go back to the trade that got San Francisco to third overall pick in the first place. They traded 2 first-round picks to Miami. Miami eventually moved one of them to Philadelphia, but 2 first-round picks and others were given up by San Francisco to move all the way up to 3. I have a hard time believing it was for Mac Jones. The way I break down this report recently, that it's between Lance and Mac Jones, I think there's one guy, or group of people maybe, that want Mac Jones as a San Francisco 49er, and that's the Shanahan family, and specifically Kyle Shanahan. I believe that the front office is either still split or was split. Again, I think San Francisco's probably made their decision by now, but it would not surprise me at all if stories come out later that they were split on this pick. I think the front office, general manager John Lynch, probably every single scout in the San Francisco locker room, to be quite honest with you, all will probably tell Kyle Shanahan, Trey Lance has way more upside, is way more athletic, is arguably just as smart, his football IQ's off the charts, just as good as a winning record, has maybe not the passing stats that Mac Jones has, but still, again, that sophomore season, you want to talk about, 27 touchdowns or 28 touchdowns, no interceptions, incredible season, 17-0. We know all that stuff. I'm sure John Lynch is seeing 3-4 years down the line, look, this guy is the future of the league, right? We've seen the Josh Allen prototype, the Justin Herbert prototype. Trey Lance is shorter than those guys, but it plays a similar big, physical, running, dual-threat quarterback style. That is the future of the NFL. We saw Josh Allen dominate last year. A lot of people are going to want the next Josh Allen. A lot of people are going to want that. And if anybody in this class is going to be that guy, it would be Trey Lance because of his dual-threat ability. He's got a pretty nice arm, too. It's a rocket arm. He's got the accuracy issues a little bit, but again, his football IQ's off the charts. If I am the San Francisco 49ers, and if I am Kyle Shanahan, I'm listening to my general manager and my scouts, John Lynch. I understand what Kyle Shanahan is thinking, though. Kyle Shanahan's system has done him very well in the NFL so far. His system offensively has made every running back look good, made a lot of offensive lines look good, won a ton of games when the quarterback has been healthy, and again, has made those same quarterbacks like Jimmy Garoppolo look like a Super Bowl caliber quarterback, won Matt Ryan an MVP and made him a Super Bowl caliber quarterback, got Kirk Cousins a mega $1 million contract with the Minnesota Vikings, and won RG3 Rookie of the Year. And if I'm not mistaken, actually won Matt Schaub a playoff game with the Houston Texans a couple of years prior to that, too. So the Shanahan system is very friendly to quarterbacks that look, play, and really overall are Mac Jones, right? The Mac Joneses of the world thrive in the Kyle Shanahan system. And my point to Kyle Shanahan on that, because again, I believe Kyle Shanahan wants Mac Jones because he could probably, just from a blueprint standpoint, is the perfect Shanahan system runner, right? But I think coaches need to have a different mentality when it comes to quarterbacks who might not be perfect for their system. The great quarterbacks in this league, the great coaches in this league, I should say, instead of saying to players, specifically quarterbacks, can this guy run my system? Instead, the great coaches say, can I build a system around this great guy? Right? That's how it works. Because again, you look at Andy Reid. With Alex Smith winning a bunch of games, maybe even winning a playoff game or two, winning divisions, by Kansas City Chief franchise level standards, things are going fine, right? No need to go for Patrick Mahomes, completely different play style than Alex Smith, completely revamp the offense, completely change the system you've been running in Kansas City the last 3 to 4 seasons. But that's what Andy Reid did, because Andy Reid's a great coach, and instead of saying, can Patrick Mahomes run my system, the one that I was running with Alex Smith, because the answer would be no. Alex Smith and Patrick Mahomes do not play in the same system. Patrick Mahomes will not come over to run the same Alex Smith system that they ran at Kansas City with Andy Reid. Instead, Andy Reid says, nope, I'm going to change my system for this guy because he's that talented. That's what coaches need to do more, because when you do that and you buy into the player, there's a higher chance, in my opinion, of them reaching their full potential. When you buy in and you sort of go all the way in and all in on them and their play style and their strengths, that gives you the best chance to make sure that your quarterback in particular reaches the level that he's supposed to reach potentially. So if San Francisco were to take Trey Lance, maybe he wouldn't run the Shanahan system as perfect as Mac Jones would do this year. But Why can't Trey Lance make the Shanahan system better with a few tweaks that can help with a mobile quarterback, with designed quarterback runs, and maybe some different other RPO styles that could be used for Trey Lance to really enhance his game? What if the combination of Trey Lance and the Kyle Shanahan system combined is better than what Mac Jones just running the same old Shanahan system would be? Why can't it evolve? Why can't Shanahan's system add some new some tweaks or some new plays because they have such an uber talented quarterback prospect now in Trey Lance or something like that? I think it could happen. That's what my mentality would be if I were Kyle Shanahan, saying, hey, this system is great. It's gotten me so far 2 Super Bowls, but I've lost both of them. I've never really had a sustained quarterback in my system that has been able to be with me throughout years and years and years. And to be quite honest with you, I need an upgrade, because if you want to win a Super Bowl, it's clear that you might need a more dynamic quarterback, and Trey Lance can be that guy. So do you want to get to a Super Bowl with Mac Jones one day, at best, or do you want to win a Super Bowl, maybe multiple, with Trey Lance? That's the question that I'm seeing with San Francisco, because that quite honestly could happen. And I'm not saying if San Francisco takes Mac Jones that he's going to be bad, that he's going to be a bust. In my personal opinion, if Mac Jones goes to San Francisco, he can't be a bust. He's going to win too many games. He's going to look like a guy who's won maybe 8, 9, 10 games throughout the year. But they won't win a Super Bowl. They won't win multiple playoff games. And we won't see a signature Mac Jones win, because he won't carry them to any wins. It'll be the roster, and it'll be the Shanahan system. If I were John Lynch and the scouts, they would probably want Trey Lance. They probably do want Trey Lance. But according to sources, things that I'm researching independently, it looks like Kyle Shanahan gets the final say in everything San Francisco 49er land, and I don't think he's going to budge on the fact that he wants Mac Jones over Trey Lance. I would take Trey Lance, and I think if it was John Lynch's true decision to make, I don't think it's John Lynch's decision to make. I think it's Shanahan's. I think he would take Trey Lance. I think any scout in that building would take Trey Lance. I think a lot of fans would take Trey Lance, but it looks like Kyle Shanahan's going to take Mac Jones. That's what I believe will happen, but according to Adam Schefter, the gap is a lot smaller than people are giving it credit for, and Trey Lance could still be the pick, 3rd overall, come tonight when you're listening to this. All right, that's going to do it for this segment. We're going to take a short break here. On the other side of this short break, we'll get to 2 major NFL trades that happened, included Teddy Bridgewater heading to the Broncos. We'll talk about what that means for draft implications, Super Bowl implications, all that great stuff. We'll get into all that stuff right after this short break.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, I am your host, Alex Masford. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and to be continuing to listen to the show. If you're a returning listener, we really do appreciate you. I just finished giving you my final spiel on the Mac Jones versus Trey Lance discussion at number 3. I've talked about it a lot. I've also talked about Mac Jones versus Fields, just that 3rd overall pick in total. That's the last segment I'll be doing on it. By the next time you hear from me after this episode, we will have finally known who San Francisco took with that 3rd overall pick, Mac Jones or Trey Lance. It's going to be so much fun to watch. I want to stay on topic with the NFL throughout this entire show because, again, this is the draft special. But for this one, I want to talk about some trades, actually, not necessarily draft picks, but 2 big-time trades happened in the NFL the past couple of days. The Kansas City Chiefs have made another addition to their completely rebuilt offensive line. They trade for Orlando Brown, the right tackle turned left tackle at Baltimore. If you don't know Orlando Brown, he's a young Really up-and-coming tackle in this league, who was moved to left tackle when Baltimore Ravens left tackle Ronnie Stanley was hurt for the rest of the year. Ronnie Stanley might be the best pure left tackle in football right now. Orlando Brown wasn't necessarily his backup. He played a little bit of right tackle too. Came in, was a complete pro, arguably an all-pro. And it was clear that when Ronnie Stanley came back that Brown wanted to play left tackle and demanded a trade shortly after it was known that he wasn't going to be able to play left tackle for the Ravens anymore. Multiple teams were interested. This was the last team that I thought Baltimore would be trading this man to, because again, Brown is one of the better left tackles in this league. Again, Orlando Brown, pretty young. I think he's only 25, 26 years old. Really, really uber talented. One of the better left tackles in the league. And now he gets to go block for the Baltimore's probably biggest rival in the AFC playoff race, Kansas City. Again, it's not their biggest rival, period. That's obviously Pittsburgh. But when it comes to the current landscape of the NFL and the playoff races, Baltimore and Kansas City are usually the top two seeds in the AFC. When you look at it, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes get compared to each other all the time. They are two of the top young quarterbacks in this league, and we expect that they will probably go at it in the playoffs multiple times. So for the Chiefs to trade for the Ravens, arguably probably their second best offensive lineman besides Ronnie Stanley, was big for me. I thought Baltimore would want to trade Brown to probably a team. Again, a lot of teams need tackles, not just Kansas City. I thought they would want to trade him to a team that they wouldn't have to see in the playoffs or go against him, to the NFC. Plenty of teams in the NFC need a tackle, plenty of contending teams, something like that. But I think the price is what really got Baltimore to bite on this deal, because they got a first-round pick. Now, it wasn't just that. They had to give a lot of stuff up, too. So the full trade details are Kansas City is getting the offensive tackle who'll play left tackle for Patrick Mahomes, Orlando Brown, a second-round pick this year, which is pick number 58, and a 2022 sixth-round pick. Baltimore, so for Baltimore to give up Orlando Brown, they also had to give up a second-round pick, but they do get a 2020 first-rounder in return, which is the 31st overall pick this year. So they now have two first-rounders in this year's draft, a third-round pick this year, a fourth-round pick this year, and a fifth-round pick next year. So, yes, they do have to give up a second-round pick in addition to the stud left tackle, which is a little bit unconventional, but they get that first-round pick back this year, and they get a third and a fourth-round pick as well. Now, usually in the NFL, I think a lot of trades are win-win. I don't think there's a lot of lopsided trades. Again, the DeAndre Hopkins trade comes to mind. Things like that. This trade, I do believe, actually has a winner. I'm going to give it to Kansas City. Now, it is close. I don't think that Baltimore lost this trade necessarily. I just don't think they got the best end of this deal, right? You didn't want to trade Orlando Brown to begin with. You were hoping that he would maybe go play right tackle. But after Ronnie Stanley coming back, it was clear that he only wanted to play exclusively left tackle in this league, so you had to move him. The last team you probably wanted to move him to, besides Pittsburgh, was Kansas City. You move him to Kansas City. Yes, you get a first-round pick, but you also have to give up a second-round pick, so you're also paying a premium in a way as well. So you go from having a first and a second if you're Baltimore to now having two firsts, no second, and losing Orlando Brown. That first-round pick is the 31st pick overall. Baltimore has a ton of needs. Offensive line is not necessarily one of them. Maybe they could go interior offensive line, though. I think they need to replace him on the offensive line. I think getting rid of Orlando Brown makes offensive line an area of potential need. You don't have to pay him, which is nice. But I think Kansas City now, which is obviously maybe the best roster in the league, they're obviously a Super Bowl team. They've gone the past 2 years. Their biggest flaw might have been their offensive line. When they were healthy, it looked like a great offensive line, but we saw what happened in the Super Bowl when JPP, Shaq Barrett, Devin White really just tore that offensive line up completely from start to finish. So when you look at it, it was clear that they were going to do something with the offensive line, specifically when they got rid of their two tackles. I didn't think we necessarily knew how much of a drastic change this offensive line would have. This offensive line went from a good / maybe even great offensive line for the Kansas City Chiefs, which looked really, really bad in the Super Bowl, but you have to keep in mind both tackles were out. So if they were healthy, that game could have gone a lot differently. That changed the entire aspect of the game, was the fact that Patrick Mahomes was running for his life each and every play. Now, look from left to right, this offensive line. Orlando Brown is left tackle. Don't forget they signed Joe Thuney, who's arguably the best guard besides Quentin Nelson. I think Quentin Nelson's definitely the best interior offensive lineman, and I don't even think it's necessarily close. Joe Thuney could be second on your list. So Orlando Brown, a top left tackle in this league. Joe Thuney, a top guard in this league. Kyle Long, who is a Hall of Fame type player coming out of retirement to play with Patrick Mahomes. He's still there. Austin Blythe is still there, not to mention the return of Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, who's going to come back as well. This just became a top 3 offensive line in football. Specifically, that left side, that blind side, is protected by Joe Thuney and Orlando Brown. And then you look at the right and you see Kyle Long. The Chiefs are going to be able to run the ball next year. Not alone pass. Patrick Mahomes will also not be touched because of how good that offensive line is. And you already know that division, the Raiders, the Chargers, the Broncos, have tough physical defenses. You don't want Patrick Mahomes to get hurt because if he gets hurt, your season is over. So you got to protect him. And I think this was the right move for the Chiefs. You give up the 31st pick in the draft, which, again, if you're the Chiefs, your roster is already loaded. Who are you going to take at pick 31 that's better than Orlando Brown? Nobody. There's no tackle in this draft class that's going to be as good as him with that pick. I think guys like Penei Sewell, Rashawn Slater, maybe Tevin Jenkins, even from Oklahoma State, they can, be better than Orlando Brown one day. But with the options at pick 31, I don't think they can get a guy that'll be better. Sure, they're going to have to pay him at the end of this year, which kind of sucks for Kansas City because they're already paying so many different people. But I think they'll find a way to make it work. And again, every single year with Patrick Mahomes is going to be win now mode. It's sort of like that LeBron effect. I'm not calling Patrick Mahomes LeBron, but when you have Mahomes, the Chiefs each and every year are going to be trying to win a championship. There's no rebuilding. There's no let's take a couple years off to regroup. None of that. They're going to be going for a Super Bowl each and every year, specifically while he's young and in his prime. They've rebuilt this offensive line. This is what I love to see from the Kansas City Chiefs. I quickly identifying a flaw in the team, which is offensive line long term. Again, it was good in the moment until the injuries. And instead of letting that problem linger, bringing back injured guys who might not be as productive as they once were, they go all in on their quarterback, spend the money, trade the draft picks, sign the players, bring in Joe Thuney, Kyle Long, Orlando Brown, 3 absolute stud offensive linemen to come protect the best quarterback in today's game. It's a win for football. It's a win for Kansas City. And I think they won this trade. It was close, though. Don't get me wrong. Baltimore got decent compensation. Having 2 picks in the first round is always great. It's going to determine maybe what they do with them. Who wins this trade, we'll really know about a year or 2 down the line. Maybe Baltimore selects a stud receiver that, passes what Orlando Brown did for them. Who knows? The second trade that happened yesterday when you're listening to this on Wednesday. The Denver Broncos acquired a quarterback to compete with Drew Lock. Again, it has been rumored for a long time now that the Broncos were unsatisfied with the step that Drew Lock took last year, but they weren't ready to give up on him. They weren't trying to move him off the roster or trade him or anything like that, but they wanted to bring in some competition, and it was unclear if the competition would come through the draft or via free agency or any other way. It appears that the report that had been mentioned earlier before sort of the quarterback hype sort of build up for the draft was at the beginning of free agency. If you remember, the big rumor was the Broncos were going to sign a guy to compete with Drew Lock for the starting job. They didn't end up signing anybody. Fitzpatrick went to Washington. I think Andy Dalton went to the Bears. And those were 2 guys that they were really after but couldn't guarantee starting positions too, which is why probably Fitzpatrick went to Washington, Dalton went to Chicago. They ended up trading for Teddy Bridgewater today, only giving up a 6th-round pick, not having to pay a huge part of that salary either. I like the move for Denver a lot. I find it really interesting, too, because I don't think they're going to draft a quarterback. Before, I really did believe they were going to trade up for Lance or something like that. By them trading for Bridgewater, I think they're content with Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater. I think it's going to be a true open quarterback competition, and I know usually when guys say a quarterback competition, there's a favorite, there's something like that. I don't know if there's necessarily a favorite for this job. I would like to say Teddy Bridgewater because, again, he is a guy that has proven to come in, run a system, not throw interceptions, not also blow you away, but not screw over your team. He's limited, but he won't be the reason why you guys lose. In theory, right? That's the perfect world of Teddy Bridgewater. Drew Lock is a little bit more loose, throws some picks, but also has those wild plays and can win you a bunch of games, right? Can also lose you a bunch of games. I don't know if Teddy Bridgewater necessarily wins you any games. He also doesn't necessarily lose you any games, though. So they're 2 completely different types of quarterback, which is interesting because usually when you see the way quarterback rooms are set up, it's usually set up with a guy who is the starter, the young guy or the veteran, whoever it is, and they're the ones day in, day out. And the backup is usually a guy who isn't as talented, isn't as good, but is a similar style quarterback to the starter, so when they come in, they can run the system. Now Denver can almost pick the sort of way they want to play offense this year. They have a lot of weapons. They have guys like Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, KJ Hamler. I think they want to push the ball downfield, which is why I was a little bit interested by the Teddy Bridgewater acquisition, but they also don't want to lose football games. So that's what they're going to determine here. There's been reports that Drew Lock has been working out with former Hall of Fame quarterback for the Denver Broncos, obviously Peyton Manning, doing film review, trying to learn defenses better, trying to be better with the football. So if Drew Lock can make a big year 2 to year 3 leap that a lot of quarterbacks have made, doesn't have to be a huge one, I think he can beat out Teddy Bridgewater. If I had to guess right now who the starter would be, I'm going to go with Teddy. I don't think they trade for a guy unless they think there's a real shot he's going to start. This wasn't just a move to push Drew Lock. I think in a perfect world, Drew Lock is pushed, he improves, he wins the job clearly, and he becomes the franchise quarterback of the Denver Broncos. That's probably what the Broncos are hoping for. But in my opinion, they are preparing for the fact that Drew Lock was a whiff of a pick, was not the guy you picked in the second round who you thought could maybe develop into a franchise guy. Let's ride it with Teddy Bridgewater this year in a really tough division. Go after a quarterback next year via trade, free agency, or the draft. That's how I personally view it for the Denver Broncos, and I don't hate it. I just think there's a lot of explosive weapons on this Denver team. I'm not sure if, Teddy Bridgewater is the type of guy who's going to be slinging it down the field, getting it to Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant, Melvin Ingram. All of these weapons that Denver has is, yes, Teddy Bridgewater is a really nice distributor and almost like a point guard. And if this was a West Coast offensive system, I think it'd be perfect. Hell, maybe Denver decides to run a West Coast system this year because of Teddy Bridgewater's abilities. But in my opinion, with that roster and that wide receiver / tight end weaponry, I would want to push the ball downfield. In my opinion, you have to be aggressive if you're Denver, specifically because of your division. The Denver Broncos division is loaded. When you look at it, right? The Chargers have one of the top young quarterbacks in the league. Their offense is going to be great. They hired a defensive head coach. Their defense will be better. We obviously know how good the Chiefs are, and the Raiders had one of the best offenses in the league last year. You got to score points if you're Denver. Your defense is not going to be able to win you games in that division because I don't know if you can come up with a defense good enough to shut down the Chiefs, Chargers, and Raiders twice a year, every single year. I don't know if the defense for Denver will ever be able to do that. You have to score points. You got to put up at least 24 to 30 points a game if you're Denver, if you want to beat Kansas City, the Raiders, and the Chargers next year, who are going to be a real legitimate threat to make a playoff spot next year under Drew Stanley, all those new guys coming from the LA Rams. Justin Herbert will take a leak. They're going to, they've already addressed offensive line. They'll probably address it again in the draft. Tough division. I don't know if Teddy Bridgewater can get you to the playoffs in that division. I don't think he can. He seems more like a stopgap guy. The perfect guy for Denver, in my opinion, would have been Ryan Fitzpatrick in free agency. Similar style to Drew Lock. If Drew Lock isn't cutting it, you can throw Fitzpatrick in. He'll get the ball to your weapons. He'll throw it downfield, maybe win you a couple games. We'll lose you a couple games like Drew Lock does too, but I think he would be just an overall better player. Hopefully for Denver, Drew Lock takes this opportunity to, again, he's already working with Peyton Manning. He takes hopefully a big leap forward. And what he can do hopefully in the future is prove to Denver he's the franchise quarterback and Teddy Bridgewater never even sees the field. My guess is that Teddy beats him out in camp because Drew Lock doesn't take that step. But again, they might give Drew the first 4 games or something like that, see if he's like a gamer or something like that. Maybe they don't see him in the practice field, but they give him the starts anyway. I think it'll be a true open quarterback competition, and I would have to expect, as of right now, Teddy to win it, but I do think it'll be close. And I don't think you can call a winner right now. It's definitely going to go all the way into camp. All right, that's going to do it for this segment. That's going to be kind of the final normal segment of today's show. For the next 2 segments, I'm going to be giving you the mock draft I've been talking about for the last couple of weeks, my one and only full 32-pick NFL first-round mock draft. We'll get into all of it right after this short break.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, I am your host, Alex Masper. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and to be continuing to listen to the show. If you are a returning listener, we really do appreciate you. I just finished giving you my opinion on the Denver Broncos trading for quarterback Teddy Bridgewater and the Kansas City Chiefs trading for left tackle Orlando Brown. Again, both incredible trades in my opinion. I really do believe Denver got a nice veteran piece to compete with Drew Lock and maybe even start for them this year. And I obviously think that the Chiefs move is an absolute home run move to keep Patrick Mahomes upright, make sure the best quarterback in the league doesn't get touched in the backfield, hit too hard, make sure he can play in the playoffs and the late season games where it really matters. It's going to be huge also for the run game. I think the addition of Tooney, Long, and Brown will help with the run game a lot as well. Clyde Edwards-Helaire might get a heavier workload than expected to next season in order to just keep Mahomes fresh, keep his arm loose and everything like that going forward. I don't want to waste any more of your time. I want to get right into this first round mock draft. Again, all of my mock drafts so far have only been the first 10 or 16 picks or the first half. Now I'm giving you my one and only full mock draft, the entirety of the first round, all 32 picks. Again, just for some clarification, this is not what I would necessarily do if I was the GM of these teams. This is me doing my own independent research on the rumors, on scheme fits, things like that, film, all that stuff. And here's what I have come up with for how I believe tomorrow night is going to go. So let's get into it with the first overall pick. I won't waste too much time. We know Trevor Lawrence is going to be drafted by the Jacksonville Jaguars. Urban Meyer most likely doesn't come out of retirement unless he knows for a fact, he probably talked to Dabo Swinney, other college people he's connected to, that Trevor Lawrence is going to live up to the hype and be a transcended talent. I think we're looking at another version of Elway. I think his only flaws are maybe a little bit, and if his mechanical in his release, it's a little bit long. He's a little bit skinny. He's not the biggest build ever. But at that point, you're just nitpicking. He's got a rocket arm. He can move, hits every throw in the book, off platform, in the pocket, has this pocket awareness, can also run away from defenders and make throws on the runs. He's done it at the highest of levels. Beat Nick Saban as a true freshman in the national championship game. Absolutely smoked that defense. Again, you want to nitpick some games. Didn't do great in the last two college playoffs. Didn't look great in that OSU game. But it's a team sport. It's not just an individual thing. I wouldn't hold it against Trevor Lawrence. I think he's going to be an absolute superstar. And I think we're looking at a better version of Justin Herbert, if you can believe it. Justin Herbert, who set a lot of rookie records last year, passing, touchdowns, completions, yards, all that stuff. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to be a better version of Justin Herbert. And I think Jacksonville finally has maybe on pace to be the greatest quarterback in that franchise history. So again, first overall pick, Trevor Lawrence. Second overall pick, we know it's going to be Zach Wilson. In my opinion, this was a move to reset the financial table on the quarterback position for the Jets. They also have a completely new regime from a coaching staff. They want their own guy. Again, reminds me a lot of Sam Darnold. I think Zach Wilson plays a very similar style, sort of loose, a lot of interceptions potentially. He didn't throw a lot last year, but in the NFL it could turn into it. I think he has a struggling issue with pressure in his face. I think he's also a little bit slim, and he didn't really do great against NFL-level coaches in college. But at the end of the day, he throws the ball like Aaron Rodgers. It comes out of his hand in a really similar way. He can move like Kyler Murray, throw like Aaron Rodgers. At his best, he looks like a guy who could potentially be an MVP, Super Bowl MVP. Maybe, besides Trevor, has the highest ceiling in this draft, Trey Lance included in that. He can move, he can throw. I just need to make sure he lives up to the hype in the draft. Again, I love Zach Wilson. I think he's an incredible prospect. If he was going to San Francisco, I would guarantee you he was going to be the player he's supposed to be. I don't know if he can save the Jets in this really tough division, and that's not me trying to harp on Zach Wilson. I could go on and on about the positives, but you guys have already heard them for so long. I want to give you some insight on some of the things they might struggle with their rookie year. We all know Zach Wilson's talented. You've heard it from everybody how good he is. He can make all these off-platform throws. You just heard it from me again. But something he does struggle with, keep an eye on. Pressure in his face. Didn't do that well against teams that were ranked or had NFL-level coaches. 0-5 in those games. That's a red flag, but at the end of the day, he's super talented, has that elastic arm that we're all looking for in our quarterbacks. Looks like Aaron Rodgers. Seriously, when he throws the ball, look at the release. It looks a lot like Aaron Rodgers. Shanahan-type system. I think he could thrive. He's going to get the ball out quickly. I don't think he's going to hang on to the ball for too long, but that is something I would be concerned with, that he maybe thinks he's a little bit more athletic or can get away against guys than he is because he didn't have that extreme level of competition that the SEC has or certain teams in the ACC or Big Ten or Pac-12 have. So it's going to be interesting to see, but with the second overall pick, we already know that the New York Jets will be selecting Zach Wilson. Now, here's what we don't know. Who is San Francisco going to take? I just told you in my first segment, I won't spend too much time on it. I would personally select Trey Lance, and I would turn that card in quickly. If I wasn't going to draft Trey Lance, I would select Justin Fields. But in my opinion, and what I have heard, or read, I should say, I haven't heard anything, but what I have read and really looked up is that Shanahan seems to have final say on the personnel and the roster of the San Francisco 49ers. If that is true, I believe he won't budge, and I think he takes Mac Jones in a surprising, not surprising move of nobody would have done it besides Kyle Shanahan. I genuinely believe that Kyle Shanahan might be the only dude in the league who would take Mac Jones over these guys. And I'm not trying to say that Kyle Shanahan isn't smart. He obviously is. He's one of the bright young offensive minds, so maybe he sees something that none of us do. And I know Mac Jones is going to win games because he's going to run Kyle Shanahan's system, and it's going to look good. It's going to be efficient. They're not going to win a Super Bowl with Mac Jones. They're not going to win a lot of playoff games with Mac Jones, despite how good that defense or offensive system might be. He's limited. He doesn't have the biggest arm in the world, and he's not mobile, to be quite honest with you, and he's got limited experience. And yes, he played in the SEC, but I think we have to keep in mind, specifically for the quarterback position at Alabama, and really Alabama in general, yes, you're going up against the top competition in the SEC, but you're already so far and away better. Specifically this season, they were so far and away better than every team in the SEC, not named Florida, maybe Georgia. They were miles and miles ahead of LSU, Mississippi, Ole Miss, all these teams, Tennessee, miles and miles ahead of them. It wasn't even close. So, yes, Mac Jones had incredible stats in the SEC, which looks great. Not that many teams in the SEC are actually going to be able to live up to Alabama's hype and really take them down to the wire. We saw how many blowouts there were. And I'm not trying to take anything away from these Alabama prospects who are all incredible, will go super high, specifically Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, Christian Barrymore, all these guys, incredible. Najee Harris. But specifically for Mac Jones, I think the SEC competition thing is being a little bit overrated. Maybe not for some of these other guys, like Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle, who had to go up against corners like, for Florida and a bunch of it. Georgia's always got a great defense. I think it's different for the skill position players, but specifically for the quarterback at Alabama. That offensive system is really, really good, specifically for Mac Jones with Steve Sarkisian. Incredible movement, things like that. Defenses can't keep up with it in college. So those numbers are going to look good. I think they're going to take him, not who I would do. So with the third overall pick, Mac Jones, quarterback, Alabama to San Francisco, in a surprising, but at the end of the day, not surprising move. Fourth overall pick is the Atlanta Falcons. I think they want to trade out of this pick. Keep an eye on some teams to trade out. The Cowboys, the Patriots even. I've heard maybe Philly might want to trade back up, but they were already in the top 10, so I don't see it. At the end of the day, I don't see the Falcons trading this pick. If they were going to trade the pick, I think they would have already done it. We're about 24 hours out from the draft, so if they were going to move down, specifically to a pick in the teens, or maybe even like 9 if Denver were to trade up, or some of these other teams, or 15 if New England were to trade up, they would have to know who they were going to pick by then, or at least look at the prospects who are, going to be around that area, and they haven't done that. So I think with the fourth overall pick, the only guy you can really take here if you're Atlanta is Kyle Pitts. There's a lot of rumors they might be trading or shopping Julio Jones. Pitts could be that dynamic jump ball athlete replacement if you were going to do that. And again, Matt Ryan's contract is insufferable. I don't see how you get rid of it in the next 2 years, $50 million a year, potentially next year in guarantees. I see them taking Kyle Pitts with the fourth overall pick and a little bit of offensive overkill, but Arthur Smith ran a 2 tight end system with Tennessee, 35% of snaps, most in the NFL. That's a real stat. That's something that's going to matter when it comes to drafting. So again, Arthur Smith loves tight ends. No better tight end prospect maybe ever than Kyle Pitts. I think he gets selected with the fourth overall pick, tight end Kyle Pitts out of Florida, going down to the Atlanta Falcons. Now we have the fifth overall pick, which is the Cincinnati Bengals. And there's 2 names to keep in mind here. Penei Sewell from the Oregon Ducks, the left tackle, arguably generational left tackle prospect, and the other generational wide receiver prospect, Jamar Chase out of LSU. Let me give you a couple of stats here. Burrow's time before sack, 3.54 seconds. That was 14th out of 29 qualified quarterbacks for Joe Burrow last year. So he had some time. Joe Burrow's time until he scrambled was 5.53 seconds, which is the 3rd longest time in the NFL. Joe Burrow threw the 4th highest percentage of throws under 2.5 seconds, 57% of the times, which means that they like to get the ball out quickly in Cincinnati. And he was sacked only 4 times on those plays when he got the ball out quickly. So again, a majority of the time we might be harping too hard on this Cincinnati Bengals offensive line. Again, Joe Burrow, according to these analytics that I've been researching, has some time to throw. 3.74 seconds, that's 14th out of 29th. Joe Burrow, on average, had about 5 seconds to throw before he scrambled and held onto the ball. That's the 3rd longest time in the league. And he had a 4th highest percentage of throws, again, under 2.5 seconds. So he threw the ball, got rid of it quickly. And that makes me think Jamar Chase is the pick. I think this tackle class is deep. Of course, this wide receiver class is deep too, but they got the top 5 pick in the second round. I could see them going Jamar Chase here. I think if I was the GM, I think I'm going to start to agree with the reports coming out. I think initially I would say I would take Sewell if I was the GM, and I wouldn't take Chase, but after some of those analytics that I saw, Joe Burrow might have had more time to throw than we think. And again, that leg injury makes just everything seem so much worse for the offensive line because of the way Joe Burrow got hurt. But one play doesn't necessarily define an entire season for a positional unit. It was a terrible play. You hated to see Joe Burrow get hurt, obviously. But that offensive line isn't as bad as people are saying. It's not the worst in the world. They don't necessarily need Jamar Chase either. They have some nice wide receivers, but that connection is too strong. I would rekindle it. Jamar Chase, 5th overall pick, going to the Cincinnati Bengals, in my opinion. With the 6th overall pick, with all these guys gone, it comes down to 3 names for the Miami Dolphins. Penei Sewell, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith. I think they'll go with the best scheme fit for their offense. That's Jalen Waddle. He's the fastest player in the draft. He's a vertical field sort of extender. He's an angle eliminator, and he would be a perfect deep threat to pair with Will Fuller. Will Fuller runs straight. Jalen Waddle runs diagonally, if that's how you want to sort of put it when it comes to scheming how they get open, how they get down the field. Add that with Devontae Parker and Mike Gesicki as jump ball, uber athletic guys. You have a really, really nice receiving core for second-year quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, and you get to rekindle the relationship between Waddle and Tua going back to Alabama. I think it's going to be a home run pick. That's where I see the Dolphins going. And with the 7th overall pick, we have our first trade of my mock draft. I believe the Detroit Lions will be trading down from the 7th overall pick and trading it to the Los Angeles Chargers, who will also reunite former college teammates. I think Penei Sewell will be taken 7th overall, either by the Lions, but in my opinion, I think the Chargers will trade up and select the tackle out of Oregon. Don't have to say too much here. Generational left tackle prospect, protect Justin Herbert. They went to the same college together, both West Coast guys. Makes too much sense. And I think the Lions need more picks than necessarily players at this point, to get more players, obviously. So I think trading down makes a lot of sense for them. Chargers are in win-now mode, kind of. Lions are obviously in a full-fledged rebuild. Only have to move back 6 spots. Justin Herbert gets to reunite with his left tackle, blindside blocker, Penei Sewell. I think it would be a home run pick. With the 8th overall pick, I have another trade. This makes too much sense to me with a trade up. I think this is the spot where New England trades up. The Panthers desperately need a corner. New England can either send them one of Stephon Gilmore or J.C. Jackson, which I believe would be more likely because they haven't agreed on a contract extension. Ship J.C. Jackson, the 15th overall pick, trade up to 8. Trey Lance is still on the board because he didn't go to San Francisco, and I think New England gets their QB of the future, the successor to Tom Brady and Cam Newton, if you want to put it that way, Trey Lance out of North Dakota State. Trey Lance's football IQ, according to reports, is absolutely off the charts. We know that his physical traits are there. He can run, he can throw on the run, he's got a big enough arm to make all of the throws in the book as well. He can do some off-platform stuff as well. And apparently, again, his football IQ in reading defenses has been better than people expected, and someone even called his football IQ the best in this draft class, ahead of Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones, all these other NFL-ready guys. And Trey Lance has been the guy that's been labeled as a project, the guy who might need to sit down for a couple of games, maybe even a whole year, and we'll see you in 2022 when, Patrick Mahomes style, you're unveiled to the entire NFL. I don't know if New England would do it, but I believe he would have a chance to play year one. I don't think they would sit him the full year because I don't think Cam would be able to play up to the level of starting the entirety of the year, but I do not believe Trey Lance would start week 1 for the New England Patriots. But Josh McDaniels, Bill Belichick have prided themselves on being versatile, adapting to new players, new schemes, and really winning with different teams. Last year was a ground and pound team. We've seen teams under Tom Brady, throw for a bajillion yards, like in 2011. So, does that mean with Trey Lance they would run an entirely new system? No, they have a lot of ground and pound stuff that they can run with Trey Lance as well. They're similar players to Cam Newton, or at least Trey is. So I don't think the system would have to change that much, but you could incorporate some more down-the-field type throws that maybe Cam Newton cannot make at this stage of his career. If Lance is taken 3rd overall, I think New England would trade up for Justin Fields, not Mac Jones like some people have. But I believe Mac goes 3, meaning New England would trade up for Trey Lance, who in my opinion is better than Justin Fields. So with the 8th overall pick, I have New England trading up and selecting their QB of the future, Trey Lance. With the 9th overall pick is the Denver Broncos. Keep an eye on a trade down situation here. There's been some rumors, I don't know how concrete they are, that Miami might trade up from 18 to 9 and keep the 6th overall pick. I don't know how concrete they are, but they wouldn't surprise me at all if Denver moved down from 9. Not sure if they move all the way down to 18 with Miami, but maybe some teams, maybe a team like Philadelphia, when, obviously Devontae Smith is still available, J.C. Horn, all the top corners, Rashawn Slater could trade up. But at the end of the day, I think Denver sits tight after making a move for Teddy Bridgewater and selects Rashawn Slater, the tackle out of Northwestern. Complete stud through and through. Would make a lot of sense with an offensive line that isn't the greatest. Rashawn Slater, tackle, Northwestern, heading to the Broncos with the 9th overall pick to protect Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater. And with the 10th overall pick, I have the Cowboys selecting Patrick Surtain, not my personal favorite corner in this class. That would be J.C. Horn. But I think Surtain is the biggest name, and probably the consensus around the NFL is the best corner in this draft class, even though that doesn't necessarily agree with me. I think the Cowboys will select Patrick Surtain. They need defense. They have 10 picks this year. 8 of them at least should be defense, in my opinion. Maybe they should pull Panthers and just take all defense in the entirety of the draft. But I think with the 10th overall pick, they select the first defensive player off the board, and I believe it'll be Alabama corner Patrick Surtain II. All right, that's going to do it for this segment. I know that was only the top 10, but in the final segment of today's show, I will be giving you picks 11 through 32, and a lot faster style than I just gave that. I really wanted to do a deep dive on the top 10 because that's what everybody's talking about. Picks 11 through 20, or 11 through 32 will be a lot quicker, and we'll get into all that great stuff right after this short break.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network for the final segment of today's NFL Draft Special Edition show. And I'll just get right into it. I gave you my first 10 picks of this full 32-pick mock draft in my last segment. Picks 11 through 32 are going to go a lot quicker. I'm going to do a lot less in-depth analysis than I did in the last one. But I'm going to try to make this quick because I want to get to all of these picks. So let's get right into it. The 11th overall pick is held by the New York Giants. Could go a couple of different options here. Could go receiver, could go linebacker. Devonta Smith, Micah Parsons are names to keep an eye on. I think they go cornerback. I think guys from New England, like Joe Judge, like Brian Flores, like Matt Patricia when he was in Detroit, really value the cornerback position and know secondary is maybe the most important part of a defense, at least for these New England guys who really scheme blitzes and things like that. J.C. Horn's the next best available corner. That's who I believe the very physical New York Giants will take. J.C. Horn is a very physical corner, fits the Giants' culture, makes a lot of sense for pick 11. Pick 12 is the division rival Eagles. I think they go receiver, try to help out Jalen Hurts this year. I don't think they'll be selecting a quarterback, but Justin Fields could be picked here at 12, but I don't think they will. I think they'll give Jalen Hurts a good chance, and I think they take Devontae Smith, Heisman-winning wide receiver. Reminds me a lot of Stephon Diggs. They need a big-time player, a big-time name, too. Philadelphia is sort of looking for that next face of the franchise. Not saying Devontae Smith will necessarily be that, but reminds a lot of people of Deshaun Jackson. Deshaun Jackson played in Philly. Devontae Smith, I think, could be better than Deshaun Jackson, more versatile, not just a deep threat. Pick 12, I think it makes a lot of sense for Philly to go receiver. The best available receiver would be Devontae Smith out of Alabama, the Heisman winner. That's where I think they go. Now we're at the 13th overall pick, which was originally the LA Chargers' pick, but if you remember, I had them trading up with the Detroit Lions. So they now pick at 13. I think they're rewarded for their patience and their extra draft picks. I think the Lions get a big-time defending sort of cornerstone, Micah Parsons. Some off-the-field concerns, but Dan Campbell loves big, physical, athletic, just tough dudes. Micah Parsons hits hard, plays fast, complete athletic freak on the defensive end of the floor. You could argue he's probably the best defensive player in this class that isn't a corner, like Patrick Surtain or J.C. Horn. Makes a lot of sense for this Detroit Lions defense and the culture and the physicality that Dan Campbell wants. And I think with the 13th overall pick, the Lions go ahead and take Micah Parsons after trading back. 14th overall pick is the Minnesota Vikings. They could be a trade down candidate, wouldn't surprise me, but I think they won't end up doing it. I think they'll stay true, take the first edge rusher off the board, and I think they'll take Kwity Paye out of Michigan, who might be the most NFL-ready defensive end in this draft class, can get after the passer, can stop the run, big, physical, athletic out of Michigan, fits their defense well, and I think he could be a really nice piece for the Minnesota Vikings going forward, and I think he will be the first edge rusher taken. 15th pick is now the Carolina Panthers. If you remember, I had them also trading down from the 8th pick with New England. So they go from 8 to 15, still need a corner and a tackle. In my ideal trade scenario for them, they pick up a corner in the trade, either Gilmore or J.C. Jackson. One of those two should be included in a trade-up, meaning tackle is now the biggest need on the team. I think they go with the best available tackle. Two guys to keep an eye on here. I am personally really high on Tevin Jenkins out of Oklahoma State, complete mauler. He is not the consensus next tackle who people believe will be taken. That's Christian Darrisaw, and that's why I have the Carolina Panthers taking. If they traded down to maybe Chicago at 20 or Washington at 19, I would keep an eye on Tevin Jenkins because Darrisaw might be gone by then. Darrisaw could be a target at 16 for Arizona as well. I think Carolina takes him here at 15. Big time, physical tackle out of Virginia Tech, would thrive in a college-level offense, which is what Carolina's going to run with Sam Darnold and all of their really explosive weapons. Joe Brady, Matt Rule, I think they'll get the ball out relatively quickly as well, too, while at the same time trying to push the ball downfield. They have speedy receivers like that. They got to keep the quarterback upright. Sam Darnold needs to be protected. Darrisaw makes a lot of sense for Carolina at 15, the big-time tackle out of Virginia Tech. Now is the 16th overall pick, and it's the Arizona Cardinals. I'm fascinated by this selection. Traditionally, this front office, this coaching staff, is extremely aggressive when it comes to draft picks. Could they maybe reach on a receiver like Rashawn Bateman, like Kadarius Toney, like Elijah Moore? Maybe. I could totally see it. Will it happen? I'm just not sure. I don't know if that's the way that they're going to go. I think they probably play it safe this year. They are in a win-now team. They need a corner badly. Greg Newsome, the second, is not my next favorite corner. That would be Caleb Farley out of VT. But due to injury concerns for Farley and the fact that he didn't play last year, I think he'll probably drop in the draft. Greg Newsome probably overtakes him next in the cornerback rankings. Greg Newsome could start on the boundary right away for the Arizona Cardinals. Out of Northwestern, he was one of the best defenders on one of the best defensive teams in the country last year. Greg Newsome, 16th overall pick for the Arizona Cardinals. Isn't the flashiest pick for them, but it's something they need badly. They've done enough flashy over the past couple of years with, DeAndre Hopkins, obviously the Kyler Murray draft pick. It's time to win some games, find some guys who can contribute right away, specifically on the defensive end, and I think Greg Newsome can totally do that for the Arizona Cardinals. So again, with the 16th overall pick, I have the Arizona Cardinals selecting Greg Newsome, the second cornerback out of Northwestern. 17th overall pick is the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, they need a bunch of things, specifically offensive line and defense. I'm going to have them taking a linebacker / safety hybrid, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. I don't know how to pronounce it. I was looking up some YouTube videos trying to pronounce it correctly, but a bunch of announcers were pronouncing it differently. So again, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. But I'm talking about the linebacker / safety hybrid out of Notre Dame. He hits hard. He's fast as hell. And again, he reminds me a lot of a bigger Derwin James. He also has that Isaiah Simmons feel to him. Super versatile, elite athlete, big-time hitter. I think would be an incredible fit for this Las Vegas Raiders defense and John Gruden and really the Raider brand. I think he goes 17th overall. Again, the linebacker out of Notre Dame, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. I hope I said that right. Out of Notre Dame to the Las Vegas Raiders at 17. Here we go. After a little bit of a break, we have a new trade. The 18th overall pick is held by the Miami Dolphins. It's their second first-round pick, and it's the one that they actually own because of their team, not the Texans pick, 6th overall. I think Miami likes a lot of different guys here. Edge could be an option. OT could be an option. However, I think they trade back. I think they get some more draft picks as the board has fallen in a way that they liked. If you've noticed, I haven't called Justin Fields' name. It's not to any personal thing against Justin Fields. I love Justin Fields, the prospect. He's a close 4 for me, and I think he is a light years ahead of Mac Jones as a quarterback prospect. but all of these reports are getting too loud for me to ignore that he's probably going to fall outside of the top 10. And honestly, once you get to the teens, a lot of teams have already traded at that point. A lot of teams need receivers, defense, corners, tackles, linebackers. I don't see a way that a team trades up for him that high. I think finally at 18, a team decides to talk with Miami and make a move to get a quarterback of the future. I think that team is the Chicago Bears. Yes, I don't have sources on this or anything, but I think this could be the surprise of the night. Justin Fields falling further than people expected for whatever reason. I don't know why. I wouldn't have him fall if I were these general managers. If I were Philly, I would consider taking him. If I were maybe even Carolina, I'd consider taking him. If I was San Francisco, I would arguably take him. If I was New England, I'd arguably take him. But again, just with the way the board has fallen and all these reports coming out, it looks like that Justin Fields is going to fall. I think Chicago trades from 20 to 18, so only moving up 2 spots, but it would get them ahead of the Washington football team, who picks at 19, who would obviously, in my opinion, take Justin Fields if he was available at 19. Chicago jumps them going up 2 spots, takes Justin Fields with the 18th overall pick, maybe gives him some time to develop behind Andy Dalton for a year, and then we really do see an athletic quarterback running a Kansas City Chiefs type offense with the Chicago Bears, Ryan Pace, Matt Nagy, all them. Again, I know that they're committed to Andy Dalton for maybe at least this year. Justin Fields could sit a couple of games, but I think at 18, it's too much of a value to pass up on, and I think Chicago would realize that they pick at 20, Washington picks 19, Washington would probably take Fields and have to get ahead of them. Miami loves to trade down, accumulate more draft picks. They move down 2 spots. Chicago moves up 2 spots, and they select Justin Fields with the 18th overall pick. 19th overall pick is back to the Washington football team. While their defense is incredible, I think they pick defense here. Xavier Collins, linebacker, Tulsa. Reminds me a lot of Kyle Van Noy. Uber athletic, hard-hitting, can do a little bit of pass coverage as well. Something they need. They don't need defensive line. They need a little bit of linebacking help. Xavier Collins would be the best linebacker on the board for me here, and I think would make a lot of sense in a versatile Ron Rivera defense. Now let's get to pick 20, which is Miami, which obviously was just the trade I talked about between Chicago and Miami, so they moved down 2 spots. I think they take a swing here. Teams with 2 first-round picks traditionally in the draft might play it a little bit safer with their first, higher pick, take a big swing for a superstar with their second, later first-round pick. That's just how it traditionally works in the NFL draft. Miami had an earlier pick, played a little bit safe, selecting Jalen Waddle, who we know is going to work in the NFL as a pure speedster. Reminds a lot of people like Tyreek Hill. I think they take a big swing here on an edge rusher, Jalen Phillips out of Miami. Former number 1 overall prospect in his high school draft class, was absolutely killing it at UCLA to start his career, had a bunch of concussions and wrist injuries, and was essentially forced to medically retire early, came back, unretired from football, played with the University of Miami last year, and honestly looked like a Bosa brother. He was that dominant, that good. Injury concerns are obviously a thing. It reminds me a lot of, honestly, J.J. Watt. Also reminds me a lot of T.J. Watt. Bigger, fast, great hands, incredible first step, extremely physical, takes the fight to you, essentially. All things Brian Flores are going to love. Again, this is their second first-round pick. They've already played it safe with Jalen Waddle here. They can take a bigger swing, because if Jalen Phillips does end up panning out as a pass rusher, he will go down as a top 5, maybe even top 3 player from this draft class. He can be that good. I think they take a big swing on the Miami, Florida product, Jalen Phillips at 20 after trading down. Pick 21 is the Indianapolis Colts. We know Chris Ballard likes to trade down. I think that trend continues. Keep an eye on the New Orleans Saints, who might be trading up according to Ian Rappaport. I think this is the perfect spot for them to trade up. In my opinion, the New Orleans Saints are trading up for a corner. The Tennessee Titans, who pick at 22, also need a corner. The Colts, who pick at 21, probably want to trade down, take a couple of different guys. I think they trade down. You send the New Orleans Saints up to pick 21, trade up from pick 28 to 21, throw in a third or something like that, and they select cornerback Caleb Farley, Virginia Tech. Ton of back problems, but honestly, when he was looking healthy, specifically last year, a lot of people have pegged him, and he still could be, if he pans out with no medical concerns or anything like that, the best cornerback in this draft class. When you look at his highlights from a year ago, he looks better than J.C. Horn and Patrick Surtain. That's how good it looks. Huge medical concerns, didn't play football last year. He's going to slip because of that. The Saints need a corner badly. This would be an incredible pickup for them when their roster's already stacked. They're in sort of like a weird spot. Take a big swing here on a potential superstar corner to go along with Lattimore. Caleb Farley out of Virginia Tech is who I believe the Saints will take when they trade up potentially to pick 21. Pick 22 now is that Tennessee Titan team. I told you I thought corner would be a lock for them here, but now with all those top corners gone, I think they transition to tackle to replace finally Jack Conklin. They go with right tackle Tevin Jenkins, an absolute mauler. One of the most, if not the most, physical football player in this draft class. Turn on some highlights of him or just Oklahoma State in general. He is pancake blocking for days, throwing dudes around like rag dolls. Makes too much sense for Mike Vrabel, a physical, tough dude, and a Tennessee team that lets to be physical, run the football with Derrick Henry. They finally need to really replace Jack Conklin at right tackle. They haven't done that really since he left last year. Tevin Jenkins makes too much sense here, specifically after the cornerbacks are gone. 22nd overall pick, I think Tevin Jenkins becomes a Tennessee Titan. With the 23rd overall pick is the New York Jets. And again, teams with 2 first-round picks traditionally take a bigger swing with that second first-round pick. They played it safe taking Zach Wilson earlier. I think they take a big swing on a linebacker, Jamin Davis, linebacker, Kentucky. Uber versatile, super fast, sort of a late bloomer when it came to the draft board, sort of started rising up just because of his athletic ability. And I think they take Robert Saleh, who is an incredible defensive mind, gets a really versatile, raw, athletic linebacker in Jamin Davis who can maybe even cover one day. Put him into an incredible mind with Robert Saleh. He'll put him in the right spot with the New York Jets. And again, teams with that second first-round pick tend to take big swings. I think he goes 23rd overall to the New York Jets. With the 24th overall pick, we find the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think they go running back, Najee Harris. It's been rumored heavily. I don't really have to expand on it that much. They had the worst run game in the league last year besides some of the worst teams in the NFL. They need a running back. James Conner just left. Najee Harris can do it all. 3 down back makes too much sense. 25th pick, Jacksonville Jaguars. This is the one team that has 2 first-round picks that I don't think will take a big swing and a big risk. Najee Harris went 24. I think Christian Barrymore, DT, Alabama, goes 25 to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Get a cornerstone guy who you know has a high floor, low ceiling, could be a stud run defensive stopper. Pick 25 is great value for that. Christian Barrymore, DT, Alabama, 25 to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Pick 26 is the Cleveland Browns, a team that is also aggressive and tends to take big swings. I think they do that with edge rusher Azeez Ojulari. Edge rusher, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong again. I saw some YouTube videos, some people pronouncing it like that. So again, Azeez Ojulari, edge rusher, Georgia, has some medical concerns, but led the SEC in sacks last year. The medical concerns are going to lead him to drop. Apparently he has a degenerative knee tissue issue potentially, which is a big red flag in the NFL. I don't think he falls that far. Pick 26, and I think the Browns take a big swing on a guy who could potentially be an edge rusher next to Myles Garrett for the next 10 years plus. Pick 27 is the Baltimore Ravens. This is not the pick that they got from the Kansas City Chiefs trade. That's pick 31, so this is their own true pick. They have to take receiver here, in my opinion. The guy that makes the most amount of sense would be Rashad Bateman here for me. Elijah Moore is another name to keep an eye on. So is Kadarius Toney. They have Hollywood Brown, who's the pure speed guy. I think they want more of a physical receiver. Rashawn Bateman fits that type for me. I think that's who they go with pick 27. With pick 28, it's when the Colts traded down, if you remember, with the Saints earlier in this mock. They need a tackle badly. Samuel Cosme, coming out of Texas, is the best available tackle. I think they go with him at pick 28 after trading down. Pick 29 is the Green Bay Packers. Kadarius Toney makes a little bit too much sense for me here. Guy who reminds me a lot of Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, guys who have both thrived in a Shanahan-level offense. Pair him up with Devontae Adams as guys who can really be motioned in the backfield and things like that as well, behind the line of scrimmage to get open. Fun things could be happening with Aaron Rodgers and this Green Bay offense. Pick 29, Kadarius Toney, wide receiver, Florida. Pick 30 is the Buffalo Bills. I think they'll go with Joseph Asai. Edge rusher, Texas, best edge rusher available. It's a big need for them. They could also go running back, but I think they'll wait for the later rounds like that. I think Najee Harris is the only running back to go round 1. But with Buffalo, I think they go edge rusher here. Joseph Asai, coming out of Texas, the edge rusher would be a great pick for them. Pick 31 is Baltimore again. I think they go with Elijah Vera Tucker, the offensive guard out of USC, who drops because of his interior line play. People need tackles more than guards. I think he drops because of his position. 31 to Baltimore makes a lot of sense. He can play a little bit of tackle too, don't get me wrong, but I think he'll primarily be a guard in the NFL. Would make a lot of sense for the Baltimore Ravens run game unit going forward. And with the final pick of my 32 pick mock draft, I think the last pick of the first round will be Gregory Rousseau, the edge rusher out of Miami, Florida. I think Tampa Bay, which has an absolutely loaded roster, probably the best top to bottom in the NFL, first Super Bowl team ever to bring back all 22 starters on both offense and defense. Crazy stat. I think Greg Rousseau could be either a complete stud, J.J. Watt, level 6'7", incredible defender, athletic freak of nature, or he could be a bust. Tampa Bay's in the position to take a big swing. Gregory Rousseau, a Florida product coming out of Miami, would be a huge potential home run pick for the defending Super Bowl champions, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode, sort of this NFL mock draft or just draft overall special. I can't wait to talk about the results of the draft with you guys after it all happens on Thursday night. So, it's going to be a lot of fun. And thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. That has obviously done it for today's episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast. Again, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Before I let you go, don't forget to subscribe to the show, follow us on all social media platforms, and leave us a 5-star review or just a positive review in general. Again, thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I've been your host, Alex Masferrer. I will see you all in the next one.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.